book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us. Franz Kafka. Imagine a man walking alone through a dimly lit street in Prague. His mind weighed down by thoughts so complex and unsettling that they seem to transform the very air around him. This man is Franz Kafka, a figure whose name has become synonymous with the strange, the absurd, and the profoundly human. Kafka did not write to entertain. He wrote to disturb, to challenge, to awaken. His words were never meant to lull us into comfort but to shatter the ice of complacency, forcing us to see ourselves more clearly. But what makes Kafka so important today? Why do his haunting visions still cling to our collective imagination, nearly a century after his death? The answer lies in the way his writing captures not just his own time, but the timeless struggles of alienation, bureaucracy, shame, and hope that define the human condition. Before we dive deeper into Kafka's world, take a quick moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps us bring more thought-provoking explorations in psychology, philosophy, and literature directly to you. Born in 1883 in Prague, Kafka lived at the crossroads of empires, identities, and cultural expectations. By day he was a diligent insurance clerk, buried under endless paperwork. By night, he transformed into one of the most unsettling literary voices of the modern world. His stories were not polished fantasies. They were raw nightmares etched onto paper, visions of a life suffocated by forces unseen and often incomprehensible. He wrestled with illness, a domineering father, and a fragile sense of self. He described himself as timid and hesitant, yet within this vulnerability lay a piercing sensitivity to the absurdity of existence. Kafka's world was one of uncertainty, of systems too vast to comprehend, and of individuals crushed under their weight. And here's what's striking. Though his century has long passed, Kafka's nightmares look disturbingly familiar. The anxieties he captured still pulse through our hyper-connected, algorithm-driven lives. The psychology of alienation. Alienation is the beating heart of Kafka's work. His characters are estranged not only from society but from themselves. They inhabit worlds where meaning slips through their fingers, where every attempt at connection is met with silence or rejection. In the trial, Joseph K. is accused of a crime but never told what it is. His life dissolves into a labyrinth of hearings, judges, and paperwork, all devoid of explanation. In the castle, a land surveyor seeks legitimacy from mysterious authorities, only to be perpetually delayed, ignored, and dismissed. In the metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa wakes up to discover that he is no longer a man but a grotesque insect, unrecognizable even to his family. These are not just fictional tales. They are psychological portraits of alienation that resonate across generations. Kafka understood that modern life, with all its machinery, its hierarchies, and its demands, often leaves us disconnected from our own humanity. Today, psychologists tell us that despite living in the most connected era of history, loneliness is at epidemic levels. Social media promises constant interaction yet leaves many feeling invisible. Workplaces prize productivity over meaning. Even relationships, once anchors of belonging, are often strained by unspoken isolation. Kafka saw it before us. He knew that alienation is not an accident of modern life. It is its essence. His writing forces us to stare directly into that void. The metamorphosis, transformation, and shame. Among Kafka's works, The Metamorphosis stands as his most iconic. The story begins without explanation, without comfort. Gregor Samsa wakes to find himself transformed into a giant insect. And instead of questioning reality, his first concern is practical. How will I get to work on time? It is grotesque, absurd, and yet painfully human. Gregor embodies the quiet despair of those who feel crushed by responsibility, reduced to their utility, and abandoned when they fail to deliver. His family, who once depended on him, recoils in disgust, locking him away until he dies alone. The story is not just about a bug. It is about shame. Shame is one of the most corrosive human emotions. Unlike guilt, which is about actions, shame is about identity. It whispers you are not enough. You are unworthy of love. Psychologists warn that shame isolates, silences, and corrodes the very foundation of the self. How many people today feel like Gregor? Burned out by work, stigmatized by mental illness, or quietly drowning under expectations? How many hide their struggles, fearing rejection if they reveal their vulnerability. Kafka's Metamorphosis asks a piercing question. What happens when our worth is measured only by our productivity? Bureaucracy and power. Kafka also revealed the absurdity of power. In the trial, Joseph K. is arrested without explanation. He enters a judicial process so complex, so opaque, that neither he nor anyone else seems to understand it. And yet his fate depends on it. This is the Kafkaesque nightmare, not a villain pulling strings in the shadows, but a faceless system that consumes without reason. Look around our world today. Endless forms. Customer service bots repeating scripted lines. Your call is important to us, looping into eternity. Immigration systems, tax audits, or algorithmic credit decisions, all governed by processes so complex that even insiders barely grasp them. We rarely encounter the human face of power. Instead, we meet rules, protocols, algorithms. And the more we interact with them, the smaller we feel. Psychologists call this learned helplessness, the paralysis that sets in when we repeatedly face systems beyond our control. Slowly we stop resisting. We stop questioning. We accept absurdity as normal. Kafka's genius was not to invent this nightmare but to reveal it, long before it became our daily reality. Why Kafka resonates today? Why does Kafka still matter? Because the world he described has not disappeared, it has deepened. Kafka foresaw a life where humans feel trapped by invisible rules, judged by unreachable standards, and haunted by absurdity. His stories mirror our own frustrations, with bureaucracy, with technology, with the quiet sense that we are pieces in a puzzle too vast to understand. When we describe something as Kafkaesque, we don't just label despair. We expose it. We name the absurdity. And in naming it, we reclaim a measure of power. This is Kafka's gift to us. Language for the unspeakable. A way to confront what otherwise leaves us voiceless. The hope in despair. It may sound paradoxical, but Kafka's darkness hides a strange form of hope. By showing us the absurd, Kafka frees us from the illusion that life is neat, fair, or predictable. His writing strips away the comforting lies we tell ourselves, leaving us face to face with reality. And in that confrontation lies dignity. Philosophers like Albert Camus admired Kafka because he forced us to see the absurd honestly. Camus, in fact, built his philosophy of the absurd partly upon Kafka's vision, describing him as one of the most lucid explorers of meaninglessness. Psychologists too argue that confronting despair directly can build resilience, rather than destroy it. Hope for Kafka is not the promise of escape. It is the courage to stand in absurdity and still create meaning. It is the small act of resistance, the quiet gesture of kindness, the choice to write, to speak, to care, even when the world seems indifferent. In a society filled with noise, distraction, and superficiality, Kafka's voice whispers, "Face the truth and you will find freedom." Lessons for the modern mind. Let's pause and translate Kafka's insights into lessons for today. 1. Alienation is universal but not final. Kafka shows us that isolation is not a private failure but a shared human condition. Recognizing this frees us from the shame of loneliness. 2. Bureaucracy will not disappear, but we can resist its dehumanization. Every act of kindness, every refusal to treat another as a number, is a rebellion against the faceless machine. 3. Shame thrives in silence. By naming our struggles, whether mental illness, burnout, or fear, we reclaim power from the shadows that would keep us hidden. 4. Absurdity is not the end of meaning but the beginning of freedom. By admitting life is strange, unpredictable, and often unfair, we can stop chasing illusions and start building authentic purpose. Kafka and us. When you scroll endlessly through feeds that promise connection but leave you emptier. When you face a labyrinth of forms and rules that seem designed to exhaust you. When you feel unseen, unheard, or reduced to a role rather than a person, you are living the Kafkaesque. And yet, Kafka himself never lost the instinct to write, to express, to carve fragments of truth from the darkness. He doubted himself, feared rejection, and even asked that his works be destroyed after his death. But they survived, and in their survival they remind us of a paradox. Even from despair, meaning can be born. Kafka matters not because he offers easy answers, but because he refuses them. He hands us no roadmap out of suffering, but he gives us the clarity to see it, name it, and live within it with honesty. So, Why does Franz Kafka still matter today? Because his words are not relics of a lost time. They are guides for our own. He shows us the contours of alienation, the corrosive power of shame, the absurdity of bureaucracy, and the paradoxical hope that lies within despair. Kafka matters because he reminds us that clarity is a form of resistance, that naming the absurd is the first step toward defying it, and that even in our darkest moments, we can discover a spark of dignity. As he once wrote, a book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us. Kafka's books remain that axe, breaking through numbness, forcing us to feel, and awakening us to truths we would rather ignore. In the end, Kafka reminds us, even in a world of absurdity, we are not powerless, for meaning begins where we dare to face the darkness.